Are you looking for a budget machine which has got fans and RGB built in where you don't have to spend loads of money for more extras? Well, this Tecware Forge M2 may be the case for you. Okay, so let's go through the basic specifications. So this is the Forge M2. It's a compact mATX ARGB case. Basically, it's a budget case or value case, depending on what you want to class it as. The Forge M2 offers exceptional airflow, obviously, which we'll be testing with ARGB daisy-chained functionality with, obviously, ARGB fans. The basics to it, on the front, you can fit two fans, either two 120mm, which is already included, or two 140mm. On the rear, you can fit a 120, which is already included. On the top, you can add an additional two 120mm. If you do want to go down the route of water cooling, there isn't really much room in here, in all honesty. On the front, you can fit a 120 or a 240 if you really wanted to. Now, the support and clearance, so the max GPU card length is 300mm, which should be okay for most cards, but you obviously, if you've got a water cooler in there, that will reduce your actual length you've got, so make sure you measure that out correctly. And the max CPU height, which may be an issue for some coolers, is 165mm. It's also got the hinged glass on the side, which we'll look into, but otherwise, that's the basics to it. So inside the box is very simple. You've got the case, and inside the case, you've got a bag which has got some cable tidies. I would have preferred some reusable Velcro ones personally, but still, you've got cable tidies. And then you've got a bag of screws and standoffs. No manual. Okay, let's have a look at the glass panel first. So the glass panel looks to be around about 3mm thick. It does have a nice bit of plastic protector on there, which we'll pull off now. Oops. That could have been a disaster then. And as you can see there, the actual glass is actually on a hinge, which is good. So you can swing it open. It's two magnets here, and obviously there and there, which allows it to grip. Normally you open it by pulling at the bottom here, which to be honest is a little bit fiddly to get to, but it does open and it looks pretty nice. You've got the black border around, so you can't see any of the inside rivets or anything like that. And if you wish to remove the glass panel, you can. You just open it all the way up like this, and then just lift and it pulls away. The front of the case is a mesh, so you'll probably recognize that sort of style from a lot of cases around at the moment, which allows a lot of airflow to go through. It also allows you to see all the RGB lights on, for example, the fans as well, so that makes them look even better. To remove the front, if you want to, you do just grab at the bottom. You may just have to lift the case up a little bit to fit your fingers underneath, but there is a gap, and then you just give it a good pull and it will pull off there. And as you can see, you've got those two fans which are fitted, which are, to my knowledge, RGB fans, the same as the one what's on the rear, but you can potentially change these out for other fans if you wish. The I/O panel on the top of the case, you've got the power button, which is very clicky, as well as the RGB button, which is also clicky. Then you've got two USB ports, which are USB 3.0. And then you've also got the headphone/microphone socket there as well, or should I say two individual sockets. On top of the case, you've got sort of a mesh design here, which will allow airflow through. You can also attach two 120mm fans, obviously, on the inside of the case. They don't have a dust filter on the top, and again, it's something what I don't think they really need anyway on a lot of these cases because, well, the dust isn't going to go from the inside of the case and outwards, and you don't want to trap it on the inside. So I think that looks absolutely fine. The side panel on the other side is a traditional side panel, two thumb screws, unscrew them, slides off, pretty straightforward. You've also got that 12cm fan there, which is ARGB. You've got your cutout for your motherboard, 4 expansion bays. Bear in mind it's only got 4 expansion bays because it will only take the smaller types of motherboards. No full size or extended ATX boards here. You've got no options for vertical mounting or anything like that. You do have obviously the hole here, which is obviously where your power supply will be, and that will screw in traditionally. The bottom of the case has got your 4 feet with rubber in the center of them to stop it sliding, pretty standard. You've got a mesh filter where the power supply's fan's going to be, but it is one of those filters which sort of clips in, which is a bit of a pain because if you ever want to clean it, you've got to sort of peel it off, which is a bit of a pain, then clean it and put it back on, which means you've got to turn the case upside down. I wish it was just on like a little slidey door or drawer, which would just come out so you could easily clean it. Otherwise, you've got some screws here which you can undo, which will allow you to remove the hard drive bays. So let's have a look at the inside. So this case we've got here has got a black and white two-tone effect, which is pretty good, but there are other color variations out there as well. So let's start off with a cutout. So you've got a cutout here for the back of your motherboard, so you can put mounting kits on your CPU with ease, which is good. You've also got a small hole for your 8-pin power supply CPU connection. There is quite a small hole, so it might be a little bit tight. There is another one at the top right-hand corner, which we'll look at more closely in a few seconds. Then you've got two more cutouts on the right-hand side to obviously put things like your 24-pin cables and stuff like that through, and maybe your graphics card cable and so on. There are two cutouts on the power supply here, which will allow you to put your cables like USB and different things like that inside, which is good. You've got the shroud here, which is straightforward. There's no window on the shroud, so you can't see your power supply, which could be a good or a bad thing, depending on if you've got a good or a bad power supply. But it would be nice to have the option, maybe a door here, which you could slide, close, open, or something you could put over it to cover it up if you didn't want the hole there. But again, it's not a major issue. And there are some small little holes on the top of the shroud to help with ventilation there. Otherwise, that's pretty much it for the inside. At the top right-hand corner of the case, where your cables come in from your USB ports and power button and so forth, you've got the cables that do dangle down a little bit, but they do go through a hole at the top right-hand corner, so it's not too bad. But saying that, one of the cables is multicolored, or at least the end of it is, which may stand out like a sore thumb. Looking at the back of the case, or reverse motherboard side, you can see that it's a bit of a mess with all this cabling. We'll get to that in a few seconds. You do have plenty of room here to put cable in and stuff like that. It is a little bit narrow, to be honest, so if you've got really thick cables, but for an average machine, which you'd probably be putting in this, your cabling should be okay. You've got the cutouts we spoke about, you've got some tie downs and so forth, so that's okay. You've got room for a 2.5-inch drive here, so it basically just screws in this area here. You can remove it with that screw there. And you've also got room for two traditional 3.5-inch drives down here if you wish, or you could have two 2.5-inch drives in there instead, so 3 in total, which are SSDs, but that's totally up to you. And there's plenty of room for cabling for your power supply in there as well. Now, coming down to the cables, the USB 3 cable looks fine. The front panel cables look fine, with apart from this bit hanging off, which we'll tell you about in a second. Audio cable, unfortunately, is multicolored on the end. Come on, guys. We shouldn't be doing that this day and age. It should be all black like the other cables. I can't see why. Then let's go to this cable, what's leading from the front panel, basically, where you'd normally have your power button and stuff. This is actually the reset switch, which has been turned into an LED switch. And that connects up to the fan on the back. That fan on the back then connects up to the fans on the front with these adapter cables, which then go into this mess of cables here and ends up connecting up to a Molex connection, which you end up having to connect to your power supply. That does mean that the RGB effects will be powered by the button on the front. So I think it said 12 or 14 or something like that, different effects you've got available. But it also means that the fans will go at a standard speed. So you can't actually change the speed of the fans. You can't connect them to your motherboard and make them go faster, slower, anything like that, which is a bit of a shame. You do have the option, though, of connecting the fans up via a ARGB header. That's the 5-volt one, the 3-pin one, so it's 2 pins, miss one, and then 1 pin, into your motherboard and control it through your motherboard software if you wish. But again, you cannot hook it up to your motherboard with a traditional PWM cable so you can adjust your fans. So let's go through some of the things we like and don't like about this case. So let's start off the front. We've got the mesh. The mesh is pretty good. It allows a lot of air into the machine and keeps it nice and cool. We did a few tests taking the front off to see what sort of cooling we were getting, the differences with the front on and off. And it was only roughly around about 1 degree difference on our processor, and it didn't make any difference to the graphics card. Bear in mind, though, it is quite a small case. So if you're going to put top-end stuff in, like an i9 and a 3080 graphics card, it's going to get really hot in there. But bear in mind, you're going to struggle fitting a really big graphics card in anyway, because you're limited by the amount of size you've got of 300 millimeters. For example, this 3060 fits in fine, but a lot of the 3070s we got in stock would not fit inside the case. Now, next, let's go down through the fans. The fans do the job, they suck the air in, they're pretty good in that respect, but you cannot change the speed they're running at. So there's no PWM connector on there, which allows the motherboard to adjust the speed of the fans or anything. They run constantly at the same speed, 24 hours a day, as long as the machine is switched on. And the RGB effects on the fans, they're okay, but they're nothing special. They're definitely nothing compared to a lot of the RGB effects you get on some of the newer ones. They're just okay, but saying that, you can adjust the RGB effects by pressing the button on the top of the case, which will allow you to cycle through 14 preset different designs, depending on what you're actually wanting. Bear in mind, this button is quite clicky, so it gives you a rough idea. If you want more control, you can actually plug them into your motherboard. That will allow you to control them through your actual software, but bear in mind, you will need a socket on your motherboard what supports a 5-volt ARGB connector or header, so you can actually plug it in and control it. Otherwise, you're stuck with a button on the top. Now, going on from that, cabling. While we were able to get the cabling in there and didn't have a huge problem, it is a little bit tight. So, for example, the 24-pin connection at the back, what you normally plug into your motherboard, that's a big round cable, and it was quite tight and did require a bit of moving around to get it to work fine. If you're going to add anything extra on the back, like an RGB controller or something like that, then you're going to probably struggle with room. But if you're just doing a average build, a value build, a budget build, you'll probably be okay. The other issue we had with the cabling was the sachet packet colored cabling, which is at the top right of the case, where your I/O panel is, coming down as well as on the audio cable what routes around the back of the case and then down into the bottom of your motherboard. It just looks a little bit daft. The whole case is black or white or black and white, depending on the one you go for, and then you've got these multicolored cables sticking out, which look a little bit like an afterthought, in all honesty, and it needs to be something what's addressed on all cases what have got a side window, in all honesty. Another thing I would have liked to have seen would be another hole on the PSU shroud around about this sort of area here, so you could plug in, or should I say, have the cable going from your power supply to your graphics card with ease without having to route all the way around the case to get it to plug in. So in conclusion, is it a bad case? Well, no, it's not. I actually think it's actually quite a good all-rounder case, especially if you're on a budget. It's got a nice glass window, which is on a hinge, which you can open up. It does have built-in fans, so you don't have to go out and buy more. It's got built-in RGB, so you don't have to go and buy lots of RGB stuff. It may not excel in any of those things, but it does well. There are some niggly little issues, which was said, but again, I think for the price range, it does actually quite well. So I do actually recommend this case. I hope you enjoyed that video. I know I did. If you want to see more Tecware products we've reviewed in the past, feel free to click this box just up here and you'll be able to see them. Otherwise, if you want to see any other case reviews we've done, then click this box just down here. Otherwise, give us a like, thumbs up, click the bell, you know the drill. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.